All right, we're back, and today I have one of my favorite people here, Rocco. Good to see you.
Good to see you, my friend.
So, what do you think of this setup, man? Are we social distance compliant?
100%, man. We are in separate rooms, and I love the setup, man. This is fantastic. This is a great way to move forward through all of the stuff we're going through.
Yeah, I mean, you've and tell the audience you've walked into the building today. You haven't seen me yet.
No,
you heard me through the walls.
Exactly, man. It's definitely different. I will say that, but it's a great way to follow what we're supposed to be doing through all this.
Yeah,
and I appreciate it.
Well, you put out a rather detailed statement. You released a statement. I think it was yesterday, or
it was last night.
Yeah, and I printed it out here.
Okay.
And I definitely want to get into it with you. But let me ask you point blank, like, how are you getting through the quarantine, sir?
That's a loaded question, my friend.
That's what we do here.
Yeah, no. So look, I will say this, from a professional standpoint, right?
Okay.
I haven't felt an extreme impact. Luckily, I've been fortunate that I have my own law practice. It's been actually busier because a lot of my clients are businesses that have been impacted by this. So that is something that I've been trying to help them navigate through. Personally, this has been a challenge. I'm an extrovert by nature, or I lean more extroverted, and I tell people I get my energy from being around others. And I gave this example about a week ago. I said if I was a cell phone, I feel like my battery's always 50% charged. It's never fully charged and it never dies. It's just right in that middle where I feel good but not great. I feel crappy but not terrible. It's just it's been tough, man. I'm waiting to get back to some semblance of normal, whatever that may be.
Okay. You haven't succumbed to the TV devil, have you?
So yeah, okay.
I didn't get it very vicarious. No.
So look, I mean, my job for my clients is to stay informed, right? So I try and watch all sides of everything. And one thing I had to remind myself of, because you hear both sides of what is going on. You hear, the sensationalism from the left and the right. And this is not about politics. It's about information. And I found myself getting angry at what I was hearing and just the combativeness of what is going on. But then I had to step back and realize that the media's job, in essence, is not to inform me. The media's job is to make money, and they make money through advertising. So to sell ads, you have to get people to your site, to your channel, to your show.
Titillating.
Exactly. So of course they're going to sensationalize things. So I had to just really start looking at the facts myself, and I deduce my own opinions, be them right or wrong. It's what I'm doing to help me get through this and to help guide other people that are looking to me for leadership.
Before we get into the heavy stuff, you have watched some television, right?
Yes, I have. I yes, every day. I mean, yes. To answer the question,
what else is there to do?
Right,
and it was so funny because when this all started, it seemed, number one, surreal. Number two, I literally had an epiphany very early, a personal epiphany. I mean, to others it may not be much, but for me it was, and that was, hey, I think it's going to be 4 to 8 weeks, and I have to figure out a way to make sure this time is constructive.
Sure.
Because left to my own devices and my own inner laziness as a human being, I could waste 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So I put a plan together, and so far we're doing okay. Aside from that, though, when you first heard that we were going to be locked down, did you kind of see it coming? Did you expect it, or did it kind of hit you by surprise?
I mean, being completely honest, I didn't expect it to the extent that we have been. Like I anticipated something coming, but again, I'm an optimist by nature, right? So I was thinking, okay, we have smart people, we'll figure a way through this. And as things started getting worse, it kind of hit me by surprise a little bit. But again, like I said in what I wrote yesterday, wow, this is scary. Like, we need to do this. So I went into the lockdown fully aware of what is going on and that this is what we're supposed to be doing. Did I anticipate it lasting? No. I mean, this long, part of me, no. Maybe a little bit, yes. the whole problem I've had with this from the beginning is not the fact that we're locked down or that we've done all these things. It's the lack of information and the lack of certainty. Like, that's really what it's about. And that's what our leadership needs to give, and we haven't been fed that. And that's the problem I have.
Okay, so and that's definitely, I would encourage anybody who is on Facebook, and that pretty much is 99% of the world, to go. Your page is public, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
I made the post public, and it's been shared a couple hundred times.
Yeah. Rocco Cozza. Just type in Rocco, Cozza. You'll find him. If you can't find him, you're not looking hard enough. Very detailed and very. I don't even know if this is a phrase, but I'm gonna say it was pragmatically written.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think it's a compliment. But
I appreciate that.
Okay, I think where we connected initially was we're both very pragmatic people. Mm-hmm. You probably even a little more than I, but it isn't heavy-handed. It's not a bitch session. It's very well written, and I think what you did, because where it resonated for me, this essay was speaking for me. This is how I feel, and I don't think I'm alone. I think that's why it's been shared as often as it has. Yeah. You are echoing what I might even venture to say is kind of the silent majority of people out there who are not engaging in internet battle, Facebook wars, and all that nonsense, but are sitting back trying to figure out how do they keep their business rolling, how do they keep, most importantly, their family safe, and how to mentally get, and quite frankly, get through this time where I don't know if I want to say high achievers. I certainly look at you as a high achiever, but we're high activity people.
Sure.
That's how we're wired. And there's a lot of us out there. How do we get through this pandemic, still take care of our family and all that stuff, and still feel like we're accomplishing something or moving forward?
Yeah,
am I hitting there?
100%. And you're right. It's, when I wrote that, like I'm like we've talked on other episodes, I'm a journaler, right? And I work with, my business coach every week, and he, it's interesting because I say he's the 20-year-old older version of me, like great guy, like very pragmatic, practical, and he knows me very well, and he saw the anger that was building in me, and he saw that I was a little bit off of my game, like my mental game,
the darkness.
Yeah, like it started bubbling up a lot, and we talked about that last time, and he started encouraging me to just write down what you're thinking. So I started doing that, and then I just got compelled to and I just literally sat. That was a one take, sat down, wrote it, and I debated whether I was going to post it, but then I did, and because I talked to a couple people, and they said, "Yeah, this is something that people need to hear." And I had no idea what to expect, because it was not meant to cause it was just like, hey, this is just my thoughts. Like, I want people to have rational discussions,
of course.
And you're right. The silence. I can't tell you how many private messages I got.
I've had,
and quite a few from actual government employees that have said to me, "I can't share this or comment on this publicly because of the outcry I will get because of my position, but this resonated, and thank you for saying that." And to me, that's the problem in and of itself. The fact that we can't articulate our feelings in a way that encourages discussion is the problem. We're too quick to bash now. We're too quick to point fingers. And the problem is we're being led by the emotion of fear and panic. And when you do that, you make irrational decisions. You say irrational things. And that's what has become this problem. And it's hard to come out of. And that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do. Like, hey, just think. Look at things. Don't believe everything you say. And if your opinion is different than mine, fantastic. That's what makes America great. And let's get all the information on the table, all of our perspectives, because, if you look at a viewpoint, right, you're in the other room looking at me. You have one viewpoint. I have a different viewpoint, just optically. And people don't understand that. We've gotten into this space where my viewpoint's the only viewpoint, and that's not the case. And I'm encouraging people, and a lot of people commented on the post that were very intelligent, differing viewpoints. And I appreciated people, one, taking the time to read that, two, actually taking the time to lay out their perspective in an articulate way that engaged the conversation further.
Which is very un-Facebook-like.
Yeah.
Or un-internet-like, or Twitter, or whatever the medium is. So let's talk broadly first before we get specific. Quick observation on my end, and I want to get your thoughts. So obviously, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that the government had no plan for a pandemic.
Sure.
Regardless of what we hear, there was one that was unfunded, blah, 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 blah. This prior president said this prior president said this, the current president said this, whatever. There was nothing functional, even remotely functional in coherence, textbook, ready to go when something like this happened. And I think that is the crux of what the problem. Everything else stems from the lack of being prepared. And as America, that's a little embarrassing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's at the federal and the state level. I think there was this exposed, and what I said, that it exposes a lot of things in America right now. The lack of responsibility, accountability, leadership. And that is a big part of the problem, right? That I think we were ill prepared. Both from a governmental standpoint and from an individual standpoint. Not saying you should be prepared to be locked in your house for 2-3 months, because it's hard to do that, right? People that are living paycheck to paycheck, that's a very hard thing to do. Or facing the virus itself and having to see someone you love or care about be affected by the virus. Like, you can't prepare for that. But there are other pieces of this that I think expose a lot of the ill-preparedness of society as a whole. And we're both big personal responsibility guys. But just speaking strictly, because why do we pay taxes? We pay taxes, at least the only thing I want out of my taxes is to be protected and to have the constitutional rights protected as well. Absolutely.
Well, part of that personal protection, family protection, societal protection is something like this. And we have really dropped the ball. Now, I get it. We can't say it's never happened before, because history does repeat itself. I think it was 1918 or 1918.
Yeah, it was 1918 Spanish.
Which is a hell of a long time ago.
Sure. Right.
So in the modern era, this is new. And we, as President Obama would say, this needs to be a teachable moment. When it's all said and done, we need to be learning from this so we don't, because it's going to happen again. Sure. It might not be 5 years from now. It might not be 20 years from now. It could be next year.
Yeah.
Well, we have to figure out a way to learn from this, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? This is, and that's what gets frustrating when I see the people going at one another. Like, we are a society of human beings, not Republicans and Democrats, not left and right. We're people. We're all made up the same way. We have different perspectives. We have different upbringings. We have different stations in life. And because of the fear and panic that has been created, people are reacting off of emotion. And the emotion has been created by an external force. And that's what's caused this problem. So it's hard, and I do pray that we come out of this and learn a lot, but the concern I do have is that because I don't want to say no one, a lot of people aren't looking at this rationally. And they're not trying to take those lessons. Like, yes, like we were blindsided by this. Whether you believe the virus is the hoax or it's not as bad, it was bad, right? It's not the flu. We get that. It's not. It's way more, at least the information I've assessed, right? It's more contagious. It can harm a lot more. There are different variables to that. So we have to learn from this. How do we prepare moving forward? How do we, because people want to get back to normal. I know there's this talk that we're never going to be back to normal. We're going to wear masks forever. We're going to do this.
I don't believe that.
Look, I don't either. The American people as a whole, like, we're resilient. And when we're told to do something, and this is why I think there's been this uprising this past week, when we are told to do something for the greater good, I believe as a society we do that. And we hunker down and we say, you know what, this is for the greater good. However, I think when people start feeling that the things don't add up, then they start questioning. And then what we're having now is this debate of, people saying you want to kill people or you're money over life. And that's not the
extremes,
case.
like we talked about prior. People rush to the extremes on both sides.
And that's not it. And no one's taking the time to stand in the middle and hear both sides. And that's what I think we need to do more. That's what our leadership needs to do. Like, if you look at our governor, right, whether you like him or hate him, he's in a tough, I would never want to be in that position.
Correct.
Like, it's a very tough position dealing with something like this. I do think he's missed opportunities to lead. I think, I was having this discussion earlier today. When he extended the stay-at-home order here in Pennsylvania from April 30th to May 8th, that was a great moment, in my opinion, where you could have led. All you had to say, I believe, instead of just saying, we're kicking it down the road and here's some things that may open up, talk to your citizens. Look, this is hard. I appreciate all you've done. Like, this is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And we've done a fantastic job. And here's what the data and the science that's driving our decisions is saying. We need all of you. We need 8 more days. That's it. And here's why we need these 8 days. Give us the reasoning and the data and the science to support that. This is why we need these 8 more days. And here's what we can promise you as leaders. If we see the numbers continue to support and do not spike, and we don't have this outbreak, we know and we can tell you as our populace that we will begin easing restrictions. Not this, it is a target date, but the numbers are going to decide, but they're not telling us what they're actually looking at. A leader has to disseminate the facts and be hopeful and encouraging. And I feel like that's not happening. And that's where my frustration comes in. Mm-hmm. Because leaders, that's what you have. If you step into that position, that's your responsibility to the whole, not to just the left or the right, to the whole. And that's what's being missed right now.
What has always fascinated me about American democracy has been this one troublesome point to me, going back since I was probably old enough to pay attention.
Sure.
It was always fascinating to me how the American people, whether it was on the federal, state, local, county level, whatever level, people that could not communicate well still found ways to get elected. And you would think that in a democracy, the communication, the expressiveness, the connection would almost kind of be the differentiator for voting. You would think so, because for me it certainly is.
Yeah.
But obviously we have had hundreds, if not thousands, of politicians in esteemed levels, some even presidents, who really were not good at exactly what you said, Rocco, getting out there and humanizing it, looking the camera in the eye, connecting with their audience, the people, and explaining to the average folk what's going on and why
exactly
you as a politician need their help.
Yes.
It's not a hard concept.
No, it's not.
But so many don't. And I think Governor Wolf suffers from being an ill-performing communicator as governor. It's not important to him, or he doesn't understand it, or he'll defer to experts, which a little bit of that's okay, but a little bit goes a long way. They want to hear it from the fucking governor, and it just doesn't come.
Yeah, look, if I step into a role of leadership, like the companies I lead, the one company I own that I'm the CEO of, like, the shit starts and stops with me. If
the buck stops you.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll get out in front of it, because that's my responsibility. When I take on a role of leading others, that is the responsibility. And I truly hope that we learn a lot from this about leadership, and we select better leaders moving forward. Not saying that, and this is not a political discussion or bashing anybody. Right. It's purely leadership principles, and that's part of the system we have. When we have this 2-party system, right? I tend to fall in the middle. Years ago, I was definitely more conservative because my views were different. But as I've matured and understood the world differently, I play more in the middle. I can see both sides.
Don't you think most people do, though, whether they talk about it or not?
I think the middle is the silent majority, but people are afraid to go against party politics. And I think it's because again, this comes back to the social media point, because the fear of repercussions from others. Like, someone made a comment on my post last night that said, I've been thinking these same things, but have been so fearful of saying them for the backlash I would get.
That's sad.
Like, that is a sad thing. In America.
That's sad.
Like, in America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, we were founded by individuals that questioned authority, that someone feared saying what they truly felt in themselves, for the fear of backlash. And that's the problem.
That's heavy.
It's super heavy. And this whole thing has it's weighed on me. And after I wrote that and just watching what people are saying, like it gives me encouragement that people are finally having a discussion. Not saying that I was a catalyst to it, or, it's just But I'm glad that I could encourage people to have rational thought and rational discussions and not bash and point fingers. Like, let's talk. There are two sides to it. This thing is deadly, and it has caused severe harm to people and tragedy. And I get that completely. I also understand people that are I can't imagine the fear and sorrow you feel when you can't feed your family. You know, I have kids. I couldn't imagine not being, if one of my daughters looked at me and asked me, like, we don't have any food in the house, and when are we going to have, like, that would kill me, break my heart. And as a father or a parent in general, to have that weight on your shoulders, I can't imagine. Like, I've been fortunate that, you know, I've done certain things right in life, and I've built certain things. I've been able to survive through this, but I feel both sides of the pain, and there's no right or wrong answer.
Well, okay, let's talk specifically. Let's concentrate on Pennsylvania for a second.
Sure.
And I'm going to throw you a quick thought out, and we'll get your extrapolate on that.
Yeah.
This is not. I didn't vote for Governor Wolf, but I don't have any kind of ill will toward the man. But I'm very disappointed as a realtor. When you're in my sphere, one of your ancillary companies, it works in the real estate sphere. Absolutely. So you're going to get what I'm saying, and I won't go long on this. But I mentioned it to Fred Koalo during our podcast last night that I am a realtor in real estate in Pennsylvania, and like many other states, we were evaluated as being essential or non-essential, and apparently the real estate sphere in Pennsylvania is non-essential according to this governor.
Well, so non-life sustaining,
non-life sustaining,
but that's an important distinction.
No, okay. We're one of 3 or 4 states, I think, in the entire country that's true. So, I'm a little begrudgingly, not real happy about that, but I understand, and I play ball by what the law is.
Sure.
My problem is that what about the deals we had in play? There's multiple pieces, the deal. Closing, moving someone through the real estate process, there's vendors involved, inspectors, there's lenders, there's closing companies, there's appraisers. It was literally shut down midstream with no plan as to how to finish deals, how to continue the business for those already in process, how to handle clients that we're working with but are only so far in the process. It's not just the realty firms that are being hurt, it's the public in what could be for many people the biggest purchase and asset of their life. So I won't argue whether we're life-sustaining or non-essential, whatever. There wasn't any instruction on how it was going to be implemented, even why we were chosen not to be included in businesses that could continue safely. And I think that lack of communication, and I saw it the entire time, that's what puzzles me, is there was no connecting with the public on that matter. Does that make any sense?
Complete sense. And that is the problem, the uncertainty, right? Humans, we love and take comfort in certainty. Uncertainty in life, uncertainty in anything. When things are uncertain, we get very uncomfortable and scared and fearful. In what we've been provided, at least in our state, and I'll make a comparison in a moment, we've been provided crazy amounts of uncertainty and no semblance of information backing up decisions. We hear about certain pieces of it, but not a lot of actual processes. Like take the shutdown order, right? I think they announced it on Friday and they extended it to Monday. If I'm the leader, now granted, I'm not talking about the legality of how you call a legislature back. I don't want to get into that because I'm sure people will comment and say, that's wrong, bullshit, because everybody's become a law expert or a viral expert or a doctor throughout this, which is a whole other topic we can get to.
Sure.
But my thing is, look, if I'm the governor and I'm making an order, right, telling people to shut down, and I extend it to Monday, I'm getting the entire legislature to Harrisburg and saying, we need to figure this shit out. We need to put a plan in place so we can articulate to people why we're doing what we're doing, why it's necessary, how long we anticipate it will last, and the metrics we're using going forward to say when it can stop. Like, that's what we needed. And then the whole waiver program, let's dictate what constitutes how you are eligible for a waiver. There's been no transparency in that program. And this is the problem. All we want as people, and I think people have a hard time articulating it because they're angry and they're mad and they're fearful, but people just want certainty. They just want certainty. And we haven't been given it. Now, if you look at, New York, Governor Cuomo, whether you like him or hate him, I tend to watch his conferences every day.
So do I.
He's at least giving people certainty. He's giving people every single day. He's coming on there, getting in front of it, putting out facts, saying what they're doing, why they're doing it, what they're looking at, and why they're looking at it.
Well, Trump's doing that too. I mean, to his credit, he's there. I mean, which is kind of unprecedented for a president to give news conferences every day with his
exhausting.
Team. But again, depending on what side of the political sphere you fall on, some people hate it, some people like it. Yeah. At least it's an attempt to communicate and connect. You might not like what you're hearing, but there's an attempt there.
Yeah.
This to me, Rocco, this exposes a huge problem with American politics, and that is that there's just not enough connection with the people on a regular basis. They get elected. And it isn't that they become dictators, but there's dictatorial ways about them that once they're in the seat, whatever that seat is, business as usual, and oftentimes with the least amount of effort mentally and physically as possible. And I'm sorry, Governor Wolf, there was plenty of opportunities for you to look the camera in the eye. You could have sat in your residence there in a chair, something like a fireside chat, and just connected with us, explained why it was necessary, even if he didn't have the answer. Say, look, we're still developing how we would possibly reopen a month, 4 months from now, whatever it is. We don't know yet. But here's what we do know. Here's why we're asking you to do what you can do. We're in this together. We know it's going to be painful. Empathy. Where's the fucking empathy? There isn't any.
That's the problem, and he's had multiple opportunities.
Where's Fetterman? He's from our our area. Well, people love the guy, but why isn't he out there doing that?
But there's one, and to speak to him in particular, and again, not trying to make this political, as a leader, right? Part of leading is providing hope. I believe that's my belief.
Right.
He went on, I think it was CNN, and they were asking him about the shutdown orders. His statement was, it'll be weeks before they're lifted, if at all.
Why would he say that?
Right. Like, that's my thing. Like, as a elected official leading 15.2 or 3 million people in this state, you need to provide hope to your citizens.
Absolutely.
That was just a punch to the gut to a lot of people. Now, some people are okay that they're okay being quarantined. They're looking at things differently.
Well, sure.
They think this is really bad. And I'm not saying it's not. They're just looking at the health and welfare of the whole from a different perspective. I get that. Here, Governor Wolf has had so many opportunities to really talk to the people, both sides of the argument. When it comes to, like, business owners have been making this big stink, right? They did the protests, they turned these protests into all these other things. But the other day in the governor's press conference, he said something interesting, which I think was a moment to really show leadership, but again was missed.
Okay.
One of the reporters gave a question. Hey, a business owner asked, when we do, I can't remember the exact wording of the question, but when we do release the restrictions and people are coming back to work, what happens if our employees choose not to come back to work because they're making more money on unemployment? Now, in my opinion, the response would be, well, I understand that's a great question. The unemployment compensation system is put in place when people are unable to work because they can't find work.
Right.
If your job is available and you've been called back, I mean, it's your duty, and the law says you're not eligible for unemployment anymore.
Right.
And if you have a problem with the compensation, that's a discussion you should have with your employer. His response was simply, well, I've owned businesses, and the easiest way, and I'm paraphrasing, the easiest way to solve that problem is to pay your employees more.
Yeah, see, and
now to take that point, like, I own businesses, right? So let's do the math, right? If I own a business that sells a $20 product, like we'll just say that's what I sell. Out of that $20, maybe $5 of it goes to rent, $5 of it goes to other expenses, and we'll say $5 of it goes to pay my employees. So my margin's 25%. Like, I have 25% is my profit, which goes to feed my family, right? Okay, so I'm making $5 my employee as the business owner because I've taken the risk. I may make a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Now, if I now have to pay my employees $7, okay, but I still need that $5 to support my family, now my service goes up to $22. And who does that impact?
The public.
The public at large. The people that aren't making money.
It's called inflation.
Like, that's the thing that people, I get, we should pay people a fair wage. And there are whole other discussions about that. But that is not the answer. Just, we'll pay your employees more. A chance to lead in that moment is to have the discussion.
Well, and there's a whole philosophical, political bent there.
Yeah.
Philosophical and political bent that it's all about workers' rights and workers' fair wage and all that stuff.
Sure.
And that's a different discussion too. But it's funny. It's like all of these things that people often fight for labor, and which is extremely important. And quite frankly, commerce and capitalism doesn't work without great labor.
Absolutely.
But they fight so much. I guess it goes back to Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn saying many, many years ago, in one of his most famous lines, Rocco, he said, "You can't get wealthy by demand." And again, if you demand that business owners do this, this, and this, and then you start demanding what they pay,
right?
Somebody, it's going to come from somewhere. The whole suffers.
Yeah,
the whole suffers because it's inflation. It's going to, when they're going to run out of money somewhere. I mean, the money to pay all these workers is not there if the business collapses.
Right. Well, and again, that's the thing. Like I said before, one of the businesses I'm a part owner of, we're not going to open back up. Not because we don't want to, because financially we can't. These 3 months we're closed are our busiest time of the year.
Doesn't
we
make
make
sense.
all of our money. So the other 9 months of the year, my business partner and I put money in out of our own pocket to make sure our employees get paid. And we recoup that through these months. Well, we can't. So we're just not opening back up. It doesn't make financial sense. And that's going to happen to a lot of people. We can't force businesses to pay. If someone's worth $100,000 a year, I'll pay them $100,000 a year. But don't tell me I have to pay them $100,000 a year. Let me, as the business owner, because I'm the one that chose to take the risk,
right? To
take the financial risk, and not everybody can do that, and not everybody has the opportunity or the mental fortitude to do that.
A lot of politicians, even at the state level, probably even the federal level, but it's been exposed in this pandemic. A lot of governors, a lot of them had this philosophy that they can't separate, for whatever reason, they cannot separate the way a large business, whether it's a corporation, large business, or mid to large size business works in comparison to a small business. They don't understand. You can't, they've been dictating, whether it's wages, regulations, safety regulations, they've been dictating to major corporations for so long that the major corporations have built in their expense model these regulations. Do they know they're going to have to? They're going to be laid. Those regulations are going to be laid upon them.
Sure.
You can't apply those heavy-handed tactics to mom and pop and small businesses with under 25 employees. They'll crack and buckle underneath it. You can't do it. And I don't know why, but there's a lot of governors that cannot differentiate between the two.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I think it comes a lot down to, and I hate to say this, but it's a lot of party politics. It's philosophies. From a philosophical standpoint, I believe I'm fiscally conservative, and I believe in spending money where it should be spent and not overspending. But when it comes to social things, I'm pretty liberal. It's not, I think I probably fall more libertarian, I guess. I would say that, my morals are not better than yours.
Right.
I can't tell you my way of doing something or my beliefs are better than yours. When they're talking about tax dollars, I can have an opinion on that because part of my money is going towards supporting the whole. And I get that. But I think there's a big disconnect. And this is why I think, love Trump or hate Trump, he comes at it differently, and people can't wrap their brains around it.
All right.
Because he comes from, he asks the questions that no one would really ask. And he's, granted, these press conferences can get comical at times, and I'm not saying that this is a support or a bash of Trump, but there's been some interesting moments over this whole thing that I've learned about questioning. Take for instance PPE, right? He asked, why can't we reuse it? as a business owner,
Right.
that is a question I would ask.
Right.
Like, if I have things I need to do and utilize for multiple services, is there a way to save costs that I can reuse them? That's just a simple question. But people are bashing him, saying, how could you do that? You're putting healthcare workers at risk. It's just a business question. He's asking things from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
A report, he finally said last week, I think it was, to one of the reporters. Now he does get into these bashes, which is not presidential. I get that.
No, it's not productive either.
It's not. But he made a point, and I think it was glossed over by a lot of people, and I caught it. It was, they were getting into something. He says, look, he's like, you guys, I come up here and you guys ask these nasty questions. Of course I'm going to respond in a nasty way. He's like, I'm not going to walk off stage with my head down. He's like, you asked me something
He's not
nasty.
wired that way.
Yeah, and it was a moment where I finally appreciated him admitting a flaw. Mm-hmm. And I think people just glossed over it but to me, as a study of, as a student of leadership, and that was a good moment, in my opinion, of self-awareness. Like, yeah, of course I'm going to respond that way. Like, I'm not wired to walk off stage and just say, yep, put my head down and bow out.
Well, look at the differences in style between Trump and Wolf.
Yeah, very different.
And now, and I'm not saying that either one is perfect, but Trump will articulate and he will also expound, maybe to some way off too much.
Of course.
But he will get out there and try in the best he can to resonate with people. He wants to get his point across. I don't think Wolf really cares about getting his point across. He's going to tell you what the point is and what he's going to do. He's not going to give you a lot of information, as he mentioned, but I think it's a huge style difference between the two of them. And maybe Cuomo's kind of in the middle. I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, that's a great point. And that is the problem I've had with our leadership here in this state. The governors of other states have got in front of it, and they're talking about it. Be it love them or hate them, they're at least getting out in front of it. Our governor comes on maybe once a week, and instead he puts the Secretary of Health to just give us these literal 7-minute briefings, then answer questions for 20 minutes that are, in my opinion, pre-screened, because it's not a live press conference.
Right.
They're pre-screened, and a lot of them have been softballs.
Yeah, I think again, I'm one citizen, but I believe that this pandemic has exposed weak leadership in Harrisburg, and I think the way the governor and his team has handled this, we're kind of a laughing stock in other states right now, and it's a shame. It doesn't matter in the big picture. I just don't understand he can't see that he needs to communicate and resonate with people, and not everybody is holding a master's or is holding a doctorate in literature and communication. You need to be able to communicate. Reagan used to get slagged all the time, but he was a great communicator, and he could communicate with the average folk. And that was the strength of his presidency. Policy-wise, you can argue it till you're blue in the face, positive or negative. He could communicate. You felt better after Reagan gave a speech. I don't give a shit what party you're in. You felt good to be an American. And he kind of told you, maybe sometimes too much, what you needed, not wanted, needed to hear.
That's leadership. That is leadership. Look, if I ever, or when I ever decide to get into politics, I will be the first to get up there and admit I am flawed as a human. I will make mistakes. I will be wrong. I will say the wrong things, and I will do the wrong things.
You're not allowed that, right?
Right. But what I would also say is the one thing I will do is always shoot straight.
Right.
And listen to the opinions of others and respect the opinions of others. And if I disagree with your opinion, I will not do it just because I feel that's what I need to do. I will have a factual or logical basis of doing so. That again comes down to what I see is happening is people, for instance, and I'm using my post as an example because there's a lot of things I learned from what happened. A lot of people shared the post, right, on their pages, and I would just go out of curiosity to see, because I wanted to see what discussions started happening.
Absolutely, the reach.
And it was great to see people having really good discussions, both sides. But there was one woman who shared it, and on her page, one of the women's like, yeah, this is good, but there's a factual inaccuracy, so it loses all credibility. And then a guy responds as, yeah, there's a couple of them, blah, blah, blah. And then they started talking about all people want to do is complain. okay, fine. Like, one, it wasn't to complain, and they're kind of doing the same thing on someone else's page. But if there's a factual inaccuracy, what is it? Like, that's what's not happening. Like, people are saying the facts don't support that. Okay, tell me the facts you're looking at, and that's all I want. If you disagree, because you're not supposed to agree with what I put out there, you can disagree completely. Let's have a discussion. If I wrote something in there that you think is factually wrong, please let me know your facts, because I want to be corrected if I was wrong. I want a chance to have a discussion to understand. But too many people are like, it's just wrong, factually wrong, but don't have the fortitude or even the mental capacity. That's probably the wrong word to use, and they'll probably get bashed for that. But the ability to even put those facts out there. Yeah. Okay, this is what was wrong, and here's why I believe differently.
Well, the beauty of the beauty of the web is that you put this articulate viewpoint out. And the beauty of the web is that people from all walks of life can read and comment. That's the beauty of the web.
Yes.
The unfortunate part about the web is that all people from all walks of life can and all walks of understanding can come and comment, and you're gonna get. It doesn't matter. You're gonna get. But you're so right. They're ready. We're so ready to jump, and you and I have spent hours on camera and off camera talking about a culture of wanting to be offended or looking to be offended. Yeah. And in a pandemic, that's the worst thing. This vitriol going back and forth, Rocco, is just, I mean, it's almost comical. I have to laugh because I just want to shake my head in disgust, but it's not helping the national dialogue at all. No,
and that's what, really kills me inside. I have 3 kids. My son's 18, going off to college next year, and I have 2 daughters that are growing up in this world, and I want them to be able to go out in the world and express their viewpoints without repercussion. Discussion, okay. Conversation, okay. Rational and logical debate, okay. But when people fear saying something because of what other people may lash out at them, that's a problem. And what was so interesting about, when I looked at all this stuff, not one person that had these negative things. There was a lot of people that came onto my page and had differing viewpoints and said a lot of really good stuff. And I thank them for that. Like, that was amazing. Like, thank you for sharing. This is the stuff we wanted to hear so we can all deduce our own opinions.
Right.
The people that were so far just like wrong, terrible, facts, they didn't come onto the actual post and get into the discussion with me or anybody else. It was out in the background. And that's what frustrates me. Like, I put this out, and if you want to discuss it, I'm happy to do so.
Intellectual discussion,
right?
Which anyone can have. It's very simply written, but you have to take the time to indulge yourself and do some critical thinking. Yeah. And again, it's hard, and I don't want to make a broad statement about critical thinking, but I don't see a lot of it. I think the internet's given us bits of information. Before the web, you read a newspaper or you watched network news, which was still biased depending on what station back then. But before the web, you really were getting less opinions and less areas of quote unquote news, but you really had to put your own critical thinking into each issue you would ingest. Yeah. You don't have to do that anymore. You can go to Drudge Report, or you can go to another 5 or 6 websites where you see headline. Some people never click on the links. They just see a headline, which is written for sensational purposes, and they adopt that mentally as, oh, that must be fact. Yeah. That's not fact. Right. And how many people are sharing fake news as, it blows my mind. I don't know about you, but if you just scroll through your news feed, you see people, and I mean, some people I respect, educated people, rational people. They're sharing things from websites with sensational headlines, and you look to see where it's coming from, and it's obviously coming from a no-name website that who knows written from whatever, and that's supposed to be out there as a news story. Yeah.
And what is also interesting is people are sharing articles that like they're written today that were written a month ago, a year ago, 6 years ago. People aren't, and that's what my post was meant to do, to encourage people to actually assess things for themselves, not just take media at face value, not just take what other people say at face value. Read, research, deduce opinions from what you understand. there's so much out there that, again, and I think rational thinking is hard in a time of fear and panic. When fear and panic are driving the mental state, rational thinking takes a back seat. I found myself, look, I'll be the first to admit, when this all started, and I was like, shit, like, I'm an extrovert. Isolation sucks. I don't know what to do. I'm going crazy. Like, my head was, for about a week, like, I was a complete mental train wreck, I felt like. I couldn't get a grasp on what was happening.
Couldn't get your arms around it.
Yeah, and the logic didn't make sense, and the different things I'm reading and hearing from people, like, what is happening? And then I had to take away that fear, take away the panic, take away the emotion, and that's what brought me back to the logic and the rational thinking. And that's when I started coming up with my own assessment. And I wish more people would take the time to do that, because I do believe there are a lot of intelligent people out there. And everybody is intelligent in their own way.
Absolutely.
And I respect so many people, and there's been so many people that I truly and highly respect that have been friends with for years, that are on Facebook, that when I see something they write or post, I realized that there was no thought, because I know these people, that there was no thought.
It was reactionary.
It was reactionary, exactly. There was no thought put into that. Or the other people that, they spend their entire social media life sharing memes or funny shit, and now all of a sudden they've become the medical experts, the constitutional scholars, the government experts. Like, okay, like, I have a law degree. I understand constitutional law. There are still things I don't get.
Right.
You can't make an assessment based upon a few articles you read and your reading of a law, because a lot of people are saying, well, Governor Wolf didn't have the power to do this or didn't have the power to do that. Well, you can make that. I'm a lawyer. I can argue both sides of that every day of the week. So it's like, people just need to, I wish, and I encourage people to take the time. If you're going to jump in the debate and, get into the mix, have a factual basis, or read and not attack the other side for their opinion, because we are all living different lives. We're all carrying different burdens, and we need to understand that and be empathetic of one another.
Yeah, our realities are different.
Exactly. Like, that's what I'm trying to encourage. Like, be empathetic of your fellow human. And we will get through this and come out on the other side a better society. But the fear I have inside is that empathy has taken a back seat. And I'm watching it happen slowly and surely.
It's so important for many Americans now to belong to a side.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's identity. It's identity. Is that identity politics? I don't know.
I feel like it is.
So there was multiple Facebook groups that came up about business owners that were protesting the lockdown. There's multiple ones on there, and some people that are running them that I have a lot of respect for.
Sure. I'm involved in a couple. I'm members in a couple.
Yeah, I'm not following, but I'm members in there.
Yeah.
And I'm not following them because I was very disheartened at the extremes that went along with the protest. Protesting is a really awkward situation when you have a pandemic, because I can understand the value of social distancing. You can see it. We're doing our podcast here in multiple suites. I get it. I also understand if you think it's time to reopen America. There's a part of me that thinks there's lots of businesses that can be safely and slowly reopened. Yeah. Okay, and that's a discussion. But masking yourself with your buddies and driving in a pickup truck and carrying AK-47s and walking around a business opening protest because you think you're a badass, or maybe you want to be as a photo op, or somehow this is your America, that shit scares me.
Yeah,
unnecessary.
There was. Look, I'm a firm believer in the Constitution.
Me too.
And I believe in the constitutional right, to protest, free speech, to right to assembly.
Me too.
And I get, and the people that put those rallies on and have taken the time, and one of the gentlemen in the one group, he's been putting so much effort into organizing people and trying to, and it's about getting back to work, supporting their families, and I get that.
Getting back to work.
And I appreciate the effort they've put in, and I appreciate part of that protest. Yeah, there are pieces of it that I think were a little bit out of bounds, that I think destroyed the optics of, or destroyed the point of what was happening. But then there are stories you hear on the other side about the media SUV that drove up, a bunch of people dressed as nurses jumped out, they took some pictures, and then they got back in the car and left. Like,
yeah, we're being manipulated.
Right. Like, there are a lot of different, there's both sides, but like, I get the right of protest. I get why they're protesting. And, you know, I believe that that is your right. Now, yeah, maybe they should have done more social distancing, but I also get the other side is they don't believe that's the problem. And I get that. And then when you have, and what has bothered me about this all, and I wrote this, you know, these people are saying, you want to kill people, you want to murder people because you want to be, no one is saying to those people, you have to leave your house.
Right.
No one is saying that. Right. Like, the restrictions in the grocery store are still going to be in place. You don't have to patronize these people's businesses. You don't have to deal with them in any way, shape, or form. If you are fearful of what can happen, you are welcome. That is America to stay in your home for the next 6 months. That's totally fine. No one is saying we want you to come out of your house.
Right.
All we're saying is I want to come out of mine.
Yeah, don't step on my liberties.
That's it. And that's got lost in the debate, in the argument, and and that's the problem. Like, we don't have articulate dissemination of the viewpoints. That's been the problem.
And I think in most situations in our history, I'm a big supporter of state rights.
Yeah.
And smaller federal government. I
Sure.
am. But where this is different is that this is a health-related pandemic. Where there's so much crossover, and we are just not, as a country, handling the state. It shouldn't be state versus federal. It always is.
Yeah.
But we're not handling the integration between the two levels of government very well. And I think that, you know, I think Trump's to blame a little bit, but I also think there's a lot of, not all, but a lot of governors out there that are not probably doing the best thing that they could be doing for their people. So it really has exposed us, and it goes back to not having a plan. We just don't have a plan.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we can blame a million different people in this, and I look at, okay, we're in it. Yeah, let's get out of it.
Blame is irrelevant to me.
Blame and negativity in this moment does nothing but fuels the fire of discontent. What we need to do is get together as a populace, as a society, and push through this. When it's over, it shouldn't be about pointing blame. It should be about learning what we did wrong and how we can prevent doing that again. That's what we need to do.
But the philosophical and political agenda that's attached to the power brokers in the country, coupled with the media houses, they're writing the narrative. And not just this issue. It's really a huge part of this terrible issue, but they've done it all along for decades. And I guess there's a part of me that sits back and I watch really educated and rational people fall into that manipulation and get so defensive of their guy or their gal or their party or their way or whatever. You and I have had some very deep conversations on philosophy, and for the most part, we're probably aligned pretty well.
Absolutely.
But we're also rational enough to believe that every circumstance in life is different. And if you're so narrow-minded that the liberal way is the way to live your life, or the conservative way is the way to live your life in absolutes, you're hurting yourself, your neighbors, and the national dialogue. Would you agree?
100%. And the key word you said was in absolutes. Because look, you can have liberal viewpoints, you can have conservative viewpoints, and there's a time and a place for both, I believe. It's when people deal in absolutes. That's the problem we have in this country, is so many people, like you said, they want to belong to a side, to an argument, to look at me, I'm saying something that matters. And I'm all for that. I'm all for the right of free speech, and say what you want and say your opinion. Have a basis for that opinion, not just the rhetoric that has been told to you of what your side is, because the absolute is what destroys democracy. Like, we need people to understand that an absolute view on one side of the spectrum or the other does absolutely nothing for the greater good.
How many wars have started because of absolutes?
That's exactly right.
The minorities of populations have started so many. When I say minorities, now hear me out, I'm not talking ethnic. I'm talking philosophical minorities.
Yeah, right.
The philosophical minorities in many countries have started wars.
Yeah.
When the large majority didn't want it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And That's the unfortunate thing. And it's there's so much information out there, and there's so many things happening right now that is frightening for this country. And I hope that our leaders in power now, they take this moment in time, this moment in history, and learn from it and be better for all of us moving forward. Because if not, I truly believe that the people are waking up on both sides and starting to understand our leaders may not get it. They may not see it.
Okay, so let's move the discussion to them. I'm interested to get your thoughts on the validity. This is a pretty heavy statement. The validity of the pandemic. Now, that is going to make some people's hair on their arms stand up the moment they hear me say this. The validity of the pandemic.
Sure.
Now let me walk that back so the hate mail for both of us will be minimized. I have tremendous friends who are I'm sure you do too. Yes. Physicians, nurses in care. I'm thinking of one right now as a client of mine who's a wonderful, absolutely wonderful nurse who is extremely, at least from her posts and her interaction, vigilant about how important the quarantine is and the stay-at-home is, and her optics of what she's seeing working in that environment. I get it. I'm not minimizing what she's doing. I salute her contributions. I love her for what she does. And so when I say validity of the pandemic, I'm not addressing our doctors or medical staff. I think we've flattened the curve, whatever that means. We're not overloading our hospitals, but it's still bad. One death is too many.
Yeah.
Now, when I talk about the validity of the pandemic, I'm referring to the numbers, the statistics.
Sure.
I got a good friend of mine, if you've not met Jim Stewart, very good friend of mine, lifelong friend, who's a statistician and an analytical guy. And he looks at everything that way. He takes the emotion out of the decision looking at the numbers.
Okay.
We, right now, there's a chance that when this is done or we've passed through, my fear, Rocco, is that history is going to look back on this as a mistake, in that the amount of economic damage and the amount of fear and stress put on the society was too much based upon the dilemma or the disease dilemma, the pandemic that we're actually dealing with. I hope that it's all equal, and I hope that it makes sense in history, but I got a feeling it's going to be an overreach. And my broader feeling, the last point is, I think that I do not want to lose our liberties going forward unnecessarily.
Yeah. Look, obviously you care about money over life, or you wouldn't have said that. I'm joking, because that's what people.
I'm a bastard.
Right. Look, this is something. What I believe about the pandemic, because it is, right. It's impacted the world. We have almost 1 million cases here in the U.S. I get that. We don't know the severity of it. There's so much unknown, and that's really the issue. It's we don't know enough. So we did react in a way that at the time they believed that's what was best, because the model, they said, projected X, Y, and Z. And then if we do social distancing, like the IHME model, it was if we do social distancing through May, we think it'll be 100 to 240,000. Then they revised it down to 60. Okay,
which is great news.
Yeah, it's still terrible, but again, comparatively to what was projected.
Right.
Great news. And this is not meant to minimize death, and I don't want anybody to think that way in any way, shape, or form. Then I've read things, and again, this is my information that I've learned. Whether it be right or wrong, this is the facts I have at the time. So all you out there that are going to bash this, or these are the facts I have, if you have different facts, please present them to me. A couple of statisticians wrote articles that the inputs because the models are exponential, and if you know statistics, an exponential model, one small error in a variable changes the outcome exponentially. So what they said, and what a couple people have wrote about, is the inputs were off. So when the inputs are off, the exponential projection is way off. And that's what happened. And look, we can't look back and say, oh, we should have done this. We did what we did, and we're here. We have to learn from it and say, what did we do wrong, and how can we do it differently in the future?
Right.
Do I believe that when we look back on history or at history, did we overreact? There's going to be two schools of people, right? There's going to be the people that feel that we did overreact. There's going to be people that feel we didn't do enough. And I kind of probably fall in the middle. I get why we did it. I understand. Where I have the problem is, yeah, we have medical experts, right? I get that. And I'm not trained in medicine. I'm trained in law and in business. I have 3 degrees, and they're in law, business, and psychology. I'm not a medical doctor. I have no idea. I'm not a statistician. I'm not an epidemiologist. So I'm relying on what these doctors are telling me. But all the doctors and experts are all saying different things. Like, that's the problem, right?
You have a lot of experts.
Well, right. You have Fauci, you have Birx, you have all these other doctors that are all saying different stuff.
Right.
And if you're supposed to be the experts, like, that makes it hard for an individual to deduce an opinion on what's going on. And then when they keep revising and changing and saying, we were wrong, we were off a little bit, here's what we think. And the problem I have with all of this, when it comes to this pandemic, when we locked down the country, right, we were told to lock down for what reason? So we didn't tax the healthcare system. That was the reason, because a virus is a virus. A virus is going to run its course. We're not going to eradicate it until we have a vaccine, or that it is what it is. It's a virus. You can't eradicate. There's nothing we can do that says, today we have it, tomorrow we don't. It's here. That was understood from the beginning. The reason why we're doing all of this stuff, mitigation efforts, social distancing, locking down, so we don't overwhelm the healthcare system. So when people do get it and need treated and need an ICU bed and need a ventilator, we have them. We've done that. We have so much capacity, right? But now we're being told, well, we can't really let you guys out of lockdown until we have tests. We've got to test now. That's the new narrative. The problem I have, and then I saw someone, again, comment on the post talking about, well, we don't have testing. We don't have testing. The information that person did not put was, well, what do you mean by that? How many tests do we need? Do we need to test every single American once a week, once a month? Because if you test me today and I don't present or have it, I could have it tomorrow. So that test is good for a day. So we've got to draw a line of rationality and say, what's the real practical? And that's what I think Trump is trying to articulate, but he's had a hard time doing. Like, we need a rational decision. We cannot test 200 million adults every single day. It's an impossibility. So we have to have some, but the narrative of the lockdown was, we don't want to tax the healthcare system, and we haven't. We have more than enough right now.
Right.
That's the problem I have.
Right. And it's there's you got to separate, as a consumer of anything. You need to separate the hype from the facts. And it's been very hard in this. It's been very, very hard. You have one network, a major news network, it's trying to quell fear, and maybe they're being criticized because they're not taking it serious enough. And you got a couple other networks out there that are working on fear daily. Yeah. And I don't think either decision's right. You're trying to find what's in the middle, and I don't want to come off too heavy-handed on the consumer, because it's hard to really disseminate fact from fiction today.
100% in those networks, so I watched all 3 of them just so I can get the information.
Me too.
And what you have to do, and what you got to look at, all 3 of those networks can take the exact same set of facts and spin them however they want.
Absolutely.
So you have to be able to use that logic and deductive reasoning to find the facts in what they're saying, and make your own. If you believe, if you deduce from what they're saying that it is bad, that's your right as an American to do that.
Absolutely right.
If you deduce from what they're saying it's not as bad as we think, cool, you're good.
I'm again, coming back to effective communication for the public. This whole mask thing and the way this was laid out to us is extremely confusing to everybody.
Yes,
we weren't supposed to wear the masks, and then things are getting better. The numbers have flattened out, and the projections for death and illness has been vastly reduced. But now we're wearing masks. Yeah. I see people driving down the street with them wearing a mask. I mean, I want to laugh at them, but I don't. I think they're scared. I think there's a lot of people that are scared, especially our elderly are scared.
Absolutely. It's fear and it's panic, and it's, when you see stores that have a sign that says wearing a mask is the law, that's factually inaccurate. A law was enacted by the legislature.
Right.
That's an order of the Pennsylvania Department of Health. And it's not a law. You can't be imprisoned for it. And there was stores that have said fine or imprisonment. And the order itself says if you have a medical condition and the store doesn't offer curbside service, you cannot deny entry. And I don't have to show my medical condition, yet people are being denied entry. There's a lot of civil liberties here that are at risk. And there's a lot of things that are going to come out of this, I think, that's good and bad. But there's just the mask thing is what boggles my mind, because, again, that's, research doesn't change overnight, right? Research takes time to do the research, understand it, deduce your conclusion. So at the beginning, masks don't prevent the virus. We were told this. The research says this doesn't work. Don't wear them. So we didn't wear them. We did social distancing. We did lockdown mitigation. Curve flattens. Curve starts going down. Now we're saying we think you should wear masks. And
I don't get that. I'm so confused on that. Are we wearing the masks so if we are infected, we're not affecting others, or are we wearing the masks to protect ourselves?
From what we've been told, it's not my mask protects you and your mask protects me. So it prevents me from spitting, into the air and having it infect you.
I thought social distancing was supposed to stop.
Well, this is again, this is where again I think our leadership missed. If they would have said, when they put that mask order in place, Dr. Levine or the governor should have said, "We're doing this. Here's why we're doing it. Here's the exact reason why. We think we're coming out of this. We think we're on a downward trajectory. Here's how masks, they protect you, you protect me, blah, blah, blah. Here's how they protect us because of the droplets, whatever that research is. Here's why we think they should be in place. Here's how we think it will impact the data even more. Here's how long we think we have to do it for." That's the stuff we need to see. But instead it's nope, Sunday at 8 o'clock, this is the rule till further notice. And that's disheartening for people.
That's dictatorial to me. The way I want to go out on a limb and say it. The way and the way I view Governor Wolf's administration handling this entire issue has as a business owner, as a realtor, someone who runs my own business. It has come off dictatorial and confusingly dictatorial because it didn't come with information. The timelines didn't seem to make sense. The orders within the timelines didn't make sense. Yeah. And no one likes losing their income. I'm not happy I can't work. Unfortunately, I'm okay. Yeah. But I care about my clients just like most business owners really care about their customers. Yeah. You want to eat, but at the same time, you as an attorney, you care about your clients. When you can't give them the service that you're used to, you feel terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have deals in place that are in motion. I have new clients that want to go looking at homes that are able to get their mortgage. They're okay, and I can't show homes. Yeah, I get it, somewhat. But the reason I somewhat don't get it is it's never been explained to me. Yeah. Right?
Well, that's the problem, right? There's been the lack of information. We've been fed uncertainty, and we're okay with it for a while when we believe wholeheartedly it's for the greater good. But I think what has happened is people have begun to look at things and question things and say, wait a minute, is this really necessary? Like people are asking questions. Okay, why can Walmart or Target be open and sell baby clothes and have hundreds of people in the store, yet a small mom and pop retailer who may have 1 to 2 people in the store at any given time in their existence can't be open? And they just say it's not life sustaining. There's not a reason why. There's not a saying, so we don't want to cause traffic. We don't want people out and about. We don't want people to then have to open up every business. Say those things. Give us those responses so at least we as people can understand where the decision is coming from. Instead, we're just being told what to do, and that's it. Wear a mask. Sunday at 8. At 7 o'clock, doesn't matter. You're good, but at 8, you got to wear it. It's a mandatory thing. So I could have went into that store at 7:30 and I didn't have to wear a mask, but at 8 p.m. I have to put it on. It's a law, and it's not a law. It's not. It's an order, which has different legal ramifications.
See, and to me, if you are electing officials because you want leaders, the way the Wolf administration has laid this out is not convincing to me that there's leadership going on there. I mean, you would think, or maybe I would think, that they would want to exude leadership at a time of crisis. I mean, you know, you can argue the virtues of George W. Bush or not, but he, at least from a communication standpoint, made us feel okay after 9/11.
Yeah.
There was, you can't dismiss what he did for the country right after 9/11 in terms of spirit and emotional. Sure. You can't dismiss that. You can argue the war and all that after that, but ultimately, he was the leader we needed at that time.
Yeah.
History will determine if Trump was the right leader federally, but for the state of Pennsylvania, Wolf had an incredible opportunity.
Yeah.
And we needed that. Not just business owners like myself and yourself, the average mill worker that's losing his job, or foundry worker, or postal worker, or whatever, small mom and pop grocery stores, card stores, hair salons, gyms.
Yeah.
You know, look, one of the excuses was given, well, you know, there's so many different business classifications, and to sit there and think about the implications of each one, we just didn't have time. Bullshit. Yeah. On the state tax return, there's all these listings of business classifications. You've done it already.
Right.
Hire the attorneys, hire the people to go into your staff and determine, based upon the operations of those businesses and how they function, what is the health risk.
Yeah, exactly.
How hard was that?
Yeah, well, and again, that's going back to my point I said earlier. You know, if I'm making these decisions as a governor that affect my job is to call the elected officials in that the people of my state have elected to represent them, and come to a rational basis and a rational plan to move forward. And that wasn't done. It was, this is what we're doing. Like, it's an emergency. I have to take this power and do that.
It was heavy-handed, and it came off dictatorial, and I think it didn't have to.
Yeah, and I don't think that was his intention.
I don't
right?
either. I don't think so.
I think everybody that's in leadership, like, I don't envy them at all. Like, they're in the worst possible position they could be in. I think there was no ill intent in anything they did.
I would agree.
And I believe they're leading in a time of crisis, and that exposes good leaders and bad leaders. Amen. That's what it does. Amen. It's not about any ill intention. It's just not good leadership. He may be a very intelligent man, a very wonderful human being, and a smart business person, but that doesn't make you a good leader. Just because you have the chair doesn't mean you're a leader.
You have to communicate.
Yeah, like, leadership is individual. It's not a position.
Right.
You are elected as governor.
Right.
That doesn't make you a leader.
Right. No, that's right. That's
and that's what
right.
people are missing. Like, we need people that are actual leaders. They can step into the spotlight, put the bullshit aside, listen to everybody, make rational decisions, and then tell people why we made that rational decision. And if not everybody's gonna like it, like, I get that. Like, no, he can't make a decision right now that everybody's gonna be like, that was brilliant. Great job. High five. You're good. Yeah. Someone's going to be pissed because someone has something
politics.
to say. Right.
That's the nature of the beast.
Yes. But at least if you articulate your reasoning and how you got opinions from all the elected leaders and had this discussion that said, you represent the whole. What is best for the whole? If we're saying the health is best for the whole, and where I get frustrated in this argument is people are saying, well, you care about, you care about yourself over the greater good of others. Well, my thing is, like, look, my job is to support my family. So if I don't if I'm a person that has no income and my family could starve or get, like, I don't give a shit about the greater good, because first and foremost, I'm to protect my family. If take us out of this pandemic and I'm hurt or sick, is the greater good or the greater society going to come to my rescue? Not necessarily. But now all of a sudden we have all these people that are saying that, well, you don't care about other people, you don't care about getting people sick, and they're missing the point. Yeah. It's about taking care of the people you love the most.
No question about that. Now, and now I will tell you that I did see on the other side of the equation, I saw a lot of selfishness. I mean, when I say a lot, I'm an optimist like yourself. I believe that the bulk of our citizenry, a bulk of our citizens are great people.
Sure.
We do focus on the negative stuff. We do. So what was disheartening and still kind of is seeing people not take it seriously, whether it's, whether my wife mentioned that she was on the trail with our daughter, and they were walking, and they even though we've been quarantining together, they were keeping their 6, because they don't want someone else saying something to them, right?
Sure.
They're keeping their 6 feet away. But there was a group of women, I guess the women walked together at the walking group, but they were all, like 8 of them, walking in a group, 2-3 feet apart from each other. There's just not enough people taking it seriously, whether it's kids not being instructed by their parents.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Or people in their 20s that think it's not a big deal. There's pockets of, it isn't defiance. I think it's ignorance, and I think it's just an uncaringness. I think it's just a selfish way, and I don't want to label Americans that way, because we are one of the most giving nations we are the most giving nation in the world. But it has exposed, unfortunately, an element of people that don't care, Rocco.
Yeah, I agree with that to an extent. I think through the beginning of this, there was a lot of that out there. I think, and we all had to lock down. Like, we had to do, I'm the most extroverted social person there is. And I locked myself in my basement. I set up an office in my basement, and I very rarely got out. And that was, really hard for me.
Right.
But I was doing it for the benefit of the whole. And I think there were a lot of people in the beginning that just didn't give a shit, and maybe call it selfish, call it for whatever you may. I think what's happening now is the uncertainty has set in, and people are starting to question, and they're not getting answers. So now people are like, well, look, if I'm not getting answers now when we're coming down and lowering the numbers, I don't give a shit, because when it was bad, I got it. Like, we weren't getting answers, but I understood, like, things were getting bad. It looked bad. Now we're coming out and things are going down, and now they're just adding more numbers because we think these people may have had COVID-19. They didn't test for it, but we're going to add it. And so people are like, what the hell is going on? So what I think has happened, not a measure of defiance, a measure of, I don't believe there's going to ever be certainty, so I need to do what's best for me and my sanity. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing. And then people will bash them for doing that. But they're not looking at it from their perspective. Like, a lot of people that are bashing, like, they're okay. Like, they may be still working from home. They may have an income. They may have a spouse that has an income.
Right.
They're not taking the time to put themselves in someone else's shoes.
Well, and I heard there was an essay on I can't say what station it was. It was on my way to the studio this morning. And I only live a couple blocks from here, so it wasn't a long ride. but they were getting into it, and I didn't stick around to listen to most of it. But one of the commentators, the talking heads, said that the country's kind of being divided up right now. Those who still have their paychecks and care really about the health, and everybody should stay home. And those who run small businesses or have lost their paychecks that need and want to get back to work because they can't feed their families. And that's where the division is. And it's a shame that it's being divided that way, but the circumstances are such where that's what's happening.
It is. And what really frustrates me is just the negative and hateful comments that get thrown back at one another.
It's not necessary.
It's not in a time like this. Like, we need to go back to pure human nature and understand that, like, we're all in this together. Regardless of what you believe, spitting hate and negativity towards another person does nothing.
Couldn't agree with you more.
And I see this happen. Like, people are saying, well, I've watched people write comments, well, I have a small business and mine's impacted, but you know what? I was just smarter with money, so I'm okay. Like, that's a bullshit thing to say.
Sure is.
You don't know that. What if that person, let's play a scenario.
Does it matter?
Well, but let's play this scenario. This is what people aren't looking at. Okay, and it was a woman who said this. She wrote this, like, bashing thing, like, that was just your stupidity or something for not planning for your finances. Okay, so put me in that situation. I'm doing okay, like, I'm able to survive this. What if, God forbid, one of my children had a terrible medical incident that drained my finances 6 months before this happened? And now I'm fighting to stay alive.
Right.
I'm fighting to feed my family, pay the mortgage, to sustain, so because I need to provide medicine and all these things for my kids. And that person doesn't understand that, but then makes those comments.
Right. Happens every day.
Every single day. And people don't take that moment to be empathetic and say, you know what? I may not know exactly what's going on in that person's life. I'm not going to say these hurtful things.
But selfishness.
It's pure, and that's what people don't get. Like, making these comments, like, you can have an opinion, and I'm happy to listen to your opinion, and if it's factually based or somewhat factually based, or there's at least some deductive reasoning, cool. But when you throw hate and anger, that's just selfish.
It's selfish, and it's unnecessary. And I challenge anyone, all of us. I challenge to go back and look at what you've written on social media in the past 6 weeks, and really, do you still own those comments, and do you still really feel that? And if you don't anymore, go back into those threads and delete them. Yeah. Go pull them off. If that does not represent what you feel today, if your opinion has matured as this pandemic has gone on, then get them off. There's nothing wrong with rethinking. I'm not saying apologize to anybody, but get that stuff off. Don't leave a legacy of anger and hatred, even though you don't consider it hatred. Don't do that. Understand the written word is powerful, way more powerful than I ever thought it was going to be, because social media is here, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But man, we really. So let's turn the conversation to some statistical numbers here.
Sure.
Not heavy stuff, but just I want to get your thoughts on something. Mm-hmm. So the numbers are outdated by a couple of days, but we have approximately 7.6 billion humans on the planet. The best that the statistic people can tell us, 7.6 billion. And as of a couple of days ago, the world death total, whether that's even a legitimate number or not, we can talk about that, how they're lumping different ailments in with COVID.
Yeah.
But the total death number was around 166,000 out of 7.6 billion.
Yeah.
And as heartless as that sounds, it still is a discussion to be had, and something that needs to be put into context.
Yeah.
Would you not agree?
No, I agree. I think a lot of what is happening needs to be put into context on both sides, right? Like, that's 160,000 deaths is terrible, right? Out of when you say out of 7.7 from a statistical standpoint, it's a smaller number, right? And
it's an infinitesimal small number.
Right. And that's not to minimize death in any way. It's the fact that we're being told what people think we should know, instead of giving the entire context.
Interesting.
Like, this is what we think you need to know, so we're going to tell you that, instead of looking at, like, we talk about, this virus in the United States has killed 45,000 people in a 2-month period, right? That we know of. Now, that number we can argue, and there's pieces to support both sides, whether that's a true number, inflated, undervalued, whatever the case may be. Okay, but we're not.
Do you think it's overinflated?
I don't know. Like, honestly, like, I'll be completely transparent. What I'm seeing in the fact that even our Secretary of Health said yesterday, they're now counting probable deaths in the total. So to my mind, okay, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you say we didn't test for this virus, so we don't know if the virus was in this person, but they had a fever and coughed and then died, COVID-19? Like, the logic doesn't make sense.
Or older people that have pre-existing conditions that
right.
they got the virus or some degree of the COVID, and their death is being blamed on COVID, but that person could have been days away from dying of heart failure.
Right.
So, I mean, it's really touchy in terms of the statistical numbers and who's making those determinations.
Well, that's the problem. That is the whole problem with what is going on. We don't know who's making those determinations. We hear it's Fauci, we hear all these different things, but we don't really know.
It's local coroners are doing it, right?
Well, right. There was a couple articles that came out this morning that I think 4 coroners in PA are challenging the Department of Health's death count, because they're saying no one in our county has died from COVID-19, but you said now 2 have. You've added 2 to the count.
Yeah, so it's hard to trust the statistical data coming from the government right now. As a consumer, as a citizen, I have a hard time personally wrapping my arms around and believing with any kind of certainty that the statistical information is correct.
Yeah, same here. And I'm a data-driven, logical thinker, and it's when I can't make sense of stuff, and what no one is talking about. Yes, this is terrible, and I don't want to wish this virus on anybody, but the 22 million people that are out of work, what about the death that's going to come from that? Or the domestic abuse or the child abuse? Like, that stuff we need to talk about too. I'm not saying that's more important, but that's part of the discussion.
But it's important.
It is. It's part of the discussion. It's part of how we make rational decisions moving forward, how to get back to some level of normal.
Had a physician friend of mine make a rare social media post, and I guess she was getting frustrated because citizens were turning on each other on social media. Well, I saw him out without a mask, and she, was coughing on people, and I guess she had enough of it, and she, I saw people taking a walk, and her point was very valid and opened my eyes a little bit. Like, we're not, and it kind of goes back to what you believe too. We can use the word empathy, but it's more about compassion. She said that we're not having compassion for those who could be living in a domestic violence mess.
Right.
Could be abused, children that are being abused.
Yes.
And here we are, and as a society, suggesting the very worst possible thing from them, and that's ordering them home with their abuser for all this time.
Right.
There's so many unique circumstances that if we paint with such a broad brush and we criticize our fellow citizens with such a broad brush, then shame on us.
Yeah.
Man, that was a deep thought for me reading that. Like, she is absolutely right.
Yeah, it's the viewpoint. Like, I was speaking to someone last week, and I gave the example. I said, if I have a new car, right, and it's parked in front of my house, and I'm looking out my window, my viewpoint is rosy. It's amazing. It's such a fantastic thing.
It's the lenses, right?
Right, but maybe on the other side of that car, someone scratched it and tore it up, and my neighbor across the street could see, that's a shitty situation. Like, I feel bad. Like, we're not stepping into the viewpoint of others.
Right.
We're so focused on this viewpoint that we have in front of us. And we're so hard. It's so hard for us to get away from that and just sidestep a little bit and look at things from a very different perspective. 1 degree difference can change everything. But people right now, because we've dug our heels in, and we're so full of anger and fear and pain and sorrow and emotions are driving our decisions and driving the way we operate with one another in a society. We're not doing that. And that's the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. And I'll tell you another problem, too, on the monetary standpoint, is that, our federal government has through Congress and the president's signature, developed very quickly these massive spending bills for aid.
Yeah.
There's a whole different discussion that can go on, the validity of it, what was needed, what wasn't needed. I don't care about any of that. But let's assume it's needed. I kind of believe it's needed, some of it. But the implementation, again, it goes back to, people always want to rip the government. And those people that defend government always say it's not fair that the average person rips government. It's such a big, complex operation. And no, it's not. Private sector, big corporations have proven time and time again they run more efficiently than any government agency. And an example of here where the federal government has not articulated the proper ways for citizens to get their aid. If they don't get their aid, what they can do. The small business loan rollout, I know personally, was a disaster.
Complete disaster.
And I guess, Rocco, I kind of expected all that. When I heard the government was going to give the bills and to give the money away and all this, first thing I said to myself was that rollout is going to be a cluster.
Oh, I agree.
And I shouldn't have expected that. And it didn't take Nostradamus to figure that out based upon our government. But, man, I was hoping to be pleasantly surprised, and what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's complete. I mean, look at our unemployment compensation system here in PA, right? You forced people out of work due to no fault of their own. And there's people that have been waiting 4 or 5 weeks to get unemployment compensation. And then they just opened it up for self-employed people, what was it, last Friday? And the system crashed over the weekend. And the governor didn't have an answer for it.
Right.
It was like, yeah, we're sorry. We know there's just a lot of people on it, and we're doing what we can. And then yesterday...
It's not good enough.
No.
That's not good enough.
Then yesterday, the Department of Labor and Industry posted on their page, the weekly claims system is down, and we have limited access to communicate. Sorry for the inconvenience.
So hear me out. The year 2020, and I'm at this shit really makes me angry. The year 2020, with all the fucking technology that we have at our disposal in the year 2020, where any web circumstance outside of maybe a unique web virus or something, the private sector would have had that problem solved in 3 or 4 hours. With full capacity, enough server space and speed to make that problem non-existent.
Yeah.
But left to government, it's going to be screwed up every time, even in the year 2020. They're having 1997 web issues in the year 2020.
Yeah.
Capacity issues. Are you kidding me?
I feel the same thing you do. It's complete, and that just shows lack of planning in government, the fact that they're referring to this emergency disaster law from 1950, it hasn't been amended since the 50s.
Shame on us.
And look, and this is both sides of the aisle. Shame on the legislatures and the people in power that how are we not looking at these things and saying, okay, we need to fix this shit. Our liquor laws, are archaic. So many laws in Pennsylvania are completely archaic, and no one's looking at it because unfortunately, and this is not to bash any one single legislator, but they're one of the highest paid public servants in the country. Our state reps and our state senators. The governor's the third highest paid governor in the country.
Right.
His staff, they said, I think came out this past week, his entire staff, $5 million.
They're getting paid.
They're getting paid.
They're on the payroll.
All getting paid. And I get it.
All the Congress people.
Okay, you're essential. I get it. You're making these. I get that. But leadership, say, you know what? We are going to take a 20% pay cut across the board.
Of course.
$1 million and put that into fixing the unemployment compensation system. Show the leadership. Show that leadership. That's what's lacking, and it angers me and frustrates me because it makes me want to get involved in this shit even more. Not saying that I could be a person to fix it, but at least I want to be part of affecting change.
Be a voice.
Yeah, that's what I want to do, and it's something I'm going to do. I tell myself I'm going to do it when the time is right, but I hope there's more people out there like me that are not stuck to party politics and are not stuck to a viewpoint. If you can convince me of a different viewpoint, I'm willing to hear it and I'm willing to change. I've evolved as a person over time. My views have evolved.
Right.
And in government, we get so stuck to operating a certain way.
Yeah.
And not being willing to change a viewpoint.
Well, I think on a procedural matter, I think part of the reason for that and why that happens at all levels of government is we don't have term limits. We don't have significant term limits where someone goes in, serves a particular time there, does their very best. They probably come out of the private sector.
Yeah.
They come in, they donate their couple years, they do their very best, and they either try for a different seat or they are done.
Yeah.
And we don't have that. We have career politicians who will go with the flow and not stay current.
Yeah. Won't upset the apple cart.
It's a level of care, too. Do they really care about... No one obviously cared about having a pandemic agency in the government or a pandemic plan because, and you can say, we had one, it was defunded. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We don't have one.
Right.
And I posted last night on social media as a joke, but it's the truth. Our government has admitted they have plans in place that if we were invaded by aliens, we had some a semblance of a plan to counteract that, or we know how we would respond.
Right.
We didn't have one for a pandemic here, terrestrial pandemic.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and that's frightening and maddening. How? And you're right. We have these career politicians, and even at the federal and the state level,
Sure.
that people just are preserving a position, so they vote along with the party. And look, if I know, and look, I can say this may change. I don't think it'll change. This is one of my core fundamental beliefs, that if and when I choose to go in that route, and if for some reason I'm ever elected into a public office, I'm voting on what is best, not what the party tells me to vote on.
Issue voting.
It's issue voting. Like, that's what people need to do. Like, regardless, like, people need to look at things on an issue by issue basis. But because, at least here in Pennsylvania, we don't have these term limits, and our legislators make a decent bit. I think they make 80-some thousand a year, plus like $100 and some per diem every day they're in Harrisburg. So it averages out to over, a six-figure income, basically working, and they can still own their own business and work. If I'm a lawyer, I can still have my law practice and be in the legislature.
Right.
Like, we're getting these career politicians that just stay in power to stay in power, not to affect change, not to do what's best for the people, not to hear both sides of the issue and come to a reasonable conclusion. Like, that's the problem. We need to fix that. And I hope that all this shit we've been through gets people to see we need to choose better people. We need better people to step up.
Now, maybe there's not better people running, and hear me out for a second. I've always believed that if there was, let's take the federal level first. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, let's say that our Congress, our legislators didn't run every 2 years. It was a 4-year seat.
Okay.
And let's say the Senate remains 6 years. That's fine. And the president's limited to 2 terms. What if legislators and their Congress people were limited to 1 4-year term, and your senators were limited to 1 6-year term? I think people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and I'm just throwing those out as being wealthy, successful people, and there's a lot more too, from all different political spectrums. There'd be a part of those people, I think, that literally would say, you know what? I'm going to run for this Senate seat, and I'm going to donate 6 years of my life to serve my country, and I will come back to my business when it is done. I will do my best for those 6 years, knowing that I don't have to fight for re-election, or I don't have to be influenced by any special interest, because guess what? There's no re-election for me. We would have a constant flow of new blood, new ideas, and I think that would encourage more youthful people to do it. I can't see the negative side of any of that. I mean, to me, that's the better way to run a democracy.
The only negative side, and I agree with term limits, and maybe it's 2 term limits, is people may say, well, is 4 years enough to get done what needs to be done? Okay, I get that. Like, that's why presidents have 2-year terms. I understand that.
I'd be okay with 2, I guess.
I'd be okay with that,
maybe
too.
Maybe not for the Senate, but for Congress, maybe.
Yeah, and maybe they move Senate to a 4-year term. Because the problem, I think, with Congress, with representatives, if they're on a 2-year cycle, they're campaigning half of their term.
No question.
And that's the problem. And at the state
Pennsylvania,
level,
same thing, right?
Yeah, I believe so. And that, look, again, like, I'm not knocking any politician, because that's a hard job. Like, you're choosing public service. I get that. Like, this is not a knock on politicians, it's a knock on the system.
Right.
Is really what it is. Like, we need to fix the system.
Right.
And we need to fix the way things are done, and the way decisions are made, and the way laws are enacted, and the way the public is heard. We elect people to represent us, but the representatives don't always do what we want.
Oh, not even close.
And that's the problem. And there's too much personal agendas or group agendas that are being handled or put forth by these elected officials that counter that fly in the face of what the people actually want.
Yeah, I just think the lack of influx of new blood, so to speak, is and you can look at it on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Take your senators, whether it's Schumer or McConnell, those guys shouldn't be there anymore. I mean, they those guys have outlived their usefulness. You can say, and I love when they say, well, the senior statesmen and these experienced senators. I don't want an experienced senator. I want someone who comes in with a fresh perspective. And actually has a couple like key points they want to fight for, and they go at it and they try to get things done, and then they leave. They do their service, and we constantly have a new influx of ideas and people. I mean, I I think there's less opportunities for corruption that way.
Agreed.
I think that there's less influence that certain lobbying groups can have on people, can have on lobby. Matter of fact, it would actually really flatten out lobbying in this country if term limits were put in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would definitely change a lot of things. I think it would change a lot of the way politics are done. I think it would change a lot of the types of people that actually run. And I think that it would do a lot of different things. And I think that.
Would you be more inclined to do it if you knew that you had a finite? I mean, you can set a finite term limit for yourself, but would you be more inclined to do it and do it as a service thing for one term, knowing you're going to go back to your private practice afterwards?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, look, I want to get into politics at some point. It just depends on when and if it ever makes sense. And I don't want to be a career politician. I want to help make change. I want to help share ideas and add rational thought and common sense to the discussion. And, that's what I want to do for the greater good. And, whether if I would ever win, institute my own term limit or, one is put in like that to me, I don't want to be that career politician. Because I believe you get stale.
Yeah.
It's now about just being a politician.
And I also think, too, for those who cannot control the human frailty of power lust, it feeds right into that. And term limits eliminate that. You cannot be the all powerful. Whether it's in Congress or whether it's in the Senate, we've got long-term career politicians who they're now mini celebrities. Whether they actually are, they are in their own minds. Yes. And we've let that happen as a people by putting them back in again. Yeah. And it's just not the best way to govern. I can't imagine someone would actually sit across the table and argue with me that it's okay to have a 6-term senator and that has actually worked out better than having maybe in that same time frame 3 new faces in there.
Yeah, that's a hard point to argue. I would agree with you because I think it's just but people aren't looking at that because it's not a big issue to them.
It's their guy or their gal,
exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right. And the politicians aren't talking about it because it impacts them.
When did it? Let me ask: has it always been this way? Do you think, or when did we start looking at our politicians as our team? Like we root for the Pirates or the Steelers, and then our side in politics is our team. When did that happen?
When media, I believe, started taking over.
Okay.
Because when you think about it, right? I mean,
like the late 80s with cable news.
Probably even into the 90s. Like I remember, growing up, not really caring about politics that much. Not like you would as a kid, but not even seeing much about politics. And then as the internet, got popular, now there's, news is instantaneous. I can get it from anywhere.
Is it news?
Well, right. I can find a piece of written work to support my side anywhere I want, and very quick. I can go on my phone right now and say something to you and find a quote unquote factual article to support it. And I think that has created this platform for politicians to put themselves out there, and the media feeds into it. Now we have podcasts and we have video shows and we have internet shows, and it makes it. And now especially with no sports, the politicians have become the stars.
That's funny. I think cable news, for all the growth that it's had, starting with Ted Turner in the early 80s with CNN, it's actually at its finest right now because, that's a terrible word to say. Maybe not their finest quality-wise, but their finest from a popularity standpoint because there's no sports. There's no other distractions. There's no Hollywood's for the most part shut down. You're the taping of all these shows that people like to watch, American Idol and all that stuff. They're the only game in town. And again, it goes back to that stupid thing that Americans want their news to be entertainment.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Fucking ridiculous.
Yes. And for the people to expect anything less is ill-informed.
Right.
Like they are there to entertain us. There's ads at every commercial break. Their job as a company is they're a for-profit entity. The news are not non-profit. They're a for-profit entity. They sell advertising to to keep the lights on? How do you sell ads? Viewers. How do you get viewers? The
Titillating.
world is ending. The world is ending.
Right.
Trump killed everybody with a drug. I gotta watch this. I gotta turn this channel on. So that's how you get the viewership that creates ad dollars. Like, that's what people have to remember. And I had to remind myself of that, because you get caught up in it. I mean, I get caught up in it, but then I have to remember, like, look, this is not all factual.
Yeah, and then you take it to other extremes, where people are sharing fake news stories online, which further hurts the discourse.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And then when Trump calls it out, and there's probably a better way to do it,
no doubt.
But he calls it out, and then people get pissed and saying he's rude to reporters, and he's rude. But I get what he's saying. Like, no one's in that position. Like, that's what I want to remind people of.
Right.
The president of the United States is probably the most stressful position you will ever be in your entire life. I can lash out at someone when I stub my freaking toe and have a bad day. Can you imagine the weight of the world on your shoulders 24/7, 365? I'd probably lash out too. I'd probably snap. And people say, well, you should be presidential. You should be, Donald Trump never came to this saying, I'm presidential.
I don't think he thought he was going to win. Number one, I think when he won, he was as surprised as everybody else.
I disagree. I think he knew he was going to win. I think he's that confident.
Okay,
because he capitalized at the right time in this country. We were fed up, not about left or right, just fed up with what was happening, and he spoke to people in a way that people understood.
Right.
And there was
in the right states.
Well, right, and that's the thing. It's the truth. And there was a study that came out. I can't remember who did it, but they said he won because it was Hillary. She spoke at like a 12th grade level. He spoke at a 7th grade level.
Right.
And because he talked to the people, they felt connected to him.
Which is insane for a billionaire to be able to connect with the average man.
Right, but he's been that way because he says the shit that people are probably, that a lot of people, not everybody, that a lot of people are thinking that don't want to say. And he does say a lot of things he shouldn't say, and he's not the most polished person.
He's not tactful.
No, not at all.
But I don't think he cares about being
He doesn't
tactful.
care.
And the thing is, so you have to ask yourself your question. Now, if you are fundamentally and philosophically different than him, you're not going to like him no matter what. That's politics. If you are a left-thinking person or a liberal-thinking person, and nothing wrong with that, but that's how you're wired. You're not gonna like him. If you're in the middle, you're really gonna be in this. Like there's days I hear him, I go, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed as an American.
Agreed.
And then there's days I hear him, I go, you know what? He didn't deliver that real articulate, but that policy I agree with. So I'm always like, and if you're on the right, if you're blindly like the blind on the left and the blind on the right, you're gonna like suck up everything he says. The outlier there is, like, what does he do? He does speak plain speak to the average person, and he's some call him a bully. I would say he stands up for himself personally.
Yes.
In every circumstance, and by doing so, oftentimes doesn't come off as presidential.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He stands up for himself personally, and
when he's attacked.
Yeah, absolutely. And what he does from a speaking point of view, he literally just asks the question, like, in a very direct way, like, why can't we do that? Like, why can't we do that? Like,
well, that's the business leader in him.
Well, right, and that's what people are missing. Like the fact that he got the comfort that went from DC to New York. They said it would take 3 weeks to prepare this ship. He says, why? Why? Tell me why. And all of a sudden, it was done in 3 days.
But now that has to happen more. I mean, that's a business philosophy brought into the. That's a private sector philosophy, a successful private sector philosophy brought into the public arena, and they're not used to seeing that.
And that's the key. They're not used to seeing it. They're used to going through the red tape and the bureaucracy and things. This got to be approved, and this has to be approved, and 7 people have to make the decision. Well, I get that philosophy because as a lawyer running my own practice, from the beginning when I started it, I asked the question, why do I have to do it the way every other lawyer has done it? Why do I have to build the firm the way every other firm is built?
Right.
I just did it differently.
Your whole pricing structure.
Yeah, everything I do is different. And that's because I just questioned the norm. I think he does that, and in public service, it doesn't happen very often. And people don't know how to handle it. And like you said, he does protect himself. You know, and I couldn't imagine I couldn't imagine, because I get butthurt when people make a comment, and I'm just like, that's a dick thing to say, or that's bullshit. And you get a little bit upset about it.
Sure.
Can you imagine being attacked every single day by major news outlets, literally about anything and everything you do? Like, he could literally go up to a young child and hug them and say congratulations, and someone will twist it into something.
Yeah. There's no question.
And that's like, I couldn't imagine feeling that pain and that stress. I get lashing out, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong with the things he does, but he's the one leading the ship right now. He's there for a reason. The people selected him as the leader.
Well, elections have consequences.
Yeah, I mean, love him or hate him, at least wish him well, that he leads us through this, because it affects all of us.
Yeah, I don't ever remember, and I'm not blowing my own horn here, but I just never remember, like, wanting a president to fail. Like, no. I just never. I was disappointed when Clinton won both times.
Yeah.
But man, I admired him as a president because he did some really amazing, and he was a great communicator.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was happy when Bush won.
Yeah.
And I was happy when Bush won a second time. I wasn't like exuberant, but I mean, I was happy because I was middle conservative.
Yeah.
I wasn't upset when Obama won. I mean, I can't remember if I voted for. I literally can't remember if I voted for Obama or McCain. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I wasn't upset when these people got the office, and you never wish them to fail. You may not agree with them philosophically, and you may hate some of the policies, but my God, if you were sitting there wanting your president to fail, you know, that's not a good way to live. It's not a good way to live as an American, right?
No, failure has consequences. Just like elections have consequences, the statement you just made, failure has consequences.
For all of us.
And when failure comes from the person steering the ship, guess what? The ship crashes. And guess what? We're all on the ship. So there's no way. I don't care who's in office. Like, if Joe Biden was leading it right now, I would not wish him any ill will.
Of course not.
I want him to steer us through. I may not agree with the things he says.
Or depending on him.
Right. Like, you're the captain of the ship. That is literally the analogy, and people will bash me for saying this because people like to bash everything people say that don't align with their viewpoint. That's like hoping the pilot crashes the plane.
Right.
And it's a simple analogy, but people don't look at it that way. It's literally, I got on a plane, Donald Trump's the pilot, I hate him, he's a piece of shit, I want him to fail. Well, failure is crashing the plane, and guess what? I'm going to die. Doesn't make sense. Like, let's just hope we get through this.
I take the Yankee Boston Red Sox analogy. That's what I take, because those two fan bases hate each other. So am I right? You're one of them.
Yeah, like the Red Sox did. Yes.
I know. So, but you get it then.
Yes.
But we've taken that sports mentality that, or maybe Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, whatever it is, and we've now. We've adopted the politics, and we actually root for our politicians, and we root for our side, and we defend our side, and we fight for our side. And man, I just don't remember, like in the 70s and the 80s as a younger person, that's how society was.
No, and you can't equate politics to sports, right?
But we do.
Well, that's the problem, right? Red Sox, Yankees analogy, great. Love the analogy. I'm a Red Sox fan, right?
The fuck's wrong with you?
Right. Many things, I'm sure.
I can't stand either one of them. That's all right, guys.
Many things. Yankees lose. I love it. Like,
of course.
But I don't,
But that's entertainment. That's pure entertainment.
There's no consequence to the Yankees losing on me. Okay. I may get, if the Red Sox make the World Series, I went to the World Series one year. Awesome. Great.
Right.
Consequences. If I choose for a politician, regardless of the side, to fail, that has consequences. And those consequences may roll downhill to me. And this is what people don't understand about equating politics to sports.
Right.
The end game of politics has consequences that impact the greater good.
Oh, the gravity is so much greater in politics. That's real life.
Yes. And people are arguing about, these people are getting so pissed about, well, you don't care about the greater good because you want to go work. It's like, well, there's other, you vehemently against one side of the political aisle is kind of the same thing.
It's very myopic.
It's you kind of got to take a step back and be self-aware and look in the mirror, because you're kind of doing the same thing. You're just not thinking about it from that perspective.
Okay, let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's turn to sports. Like, what is your thought on when we're going to get some kind of a semblance? Because both of us are really suffering without baseball.
Yes,
that's our personal little aside here. It's been freaking tough. But what do you think the outlook is going to be like for big social gatherings like that?
The optimist in me says July will start to be able to get back to some sort of gatherings. The realist says the fall.
Okay.
I would love to be able, I'm just craving to go to a baseball game. That's it. Just to go. If I have to sit every other seat, or if I have to pay 3 times the amount for a ticket because they're selling less, okay, totally fine with that. I was excited the Red Sox were coming to Pittsburgh this year in July. I was super excited for that. That may or may not happen. What I believe is that we will eventually get back to normal. I think people are still in the fear state, and they're saying we're going to wear masks forever, and we're not going to have these gatherings.
That's all nonsense. That's nonsense.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a medical expert. Maybe this virus is worse than we anticipate right now, but I do believe that eventually we're going to say, okay, well, things are going down, and we are doing the social distancing, and as things start to open up, we're going to start seeing things happen. Americans crave what we have. We don't necessarily, maybe some people do. I don't believe the majority of people want this new normal we're talking about.
No.
Of wearing a mask and I'm going to shake somebody's hand.
That's not going to happen. Who if you actually think that we're going to wear masks into perpetuity, that is ridiculous.
It's not going to happen. I'm going to shake people's hands.
Of course.
Yeah, we should practice good hygiene, which we should have been doing anyways. But the fact that our Secretary of Health has to remind us every day to wash our hands is a little bit disheartening to me.
It's a grade school little sign.
Well, and that's what's frustrating. But I get it. She's a pediatrician by training.
Yeah, I get it.
So I understand. I'm not blaming her, but that's just a little bit of a patronizing thing to me.
Sure.
We should be doing that anyways. But I do believe that when things are allowed to open back up, people are going to rush back. And if it spreads the virus, okay, the virus is a virus. It's, from my understanding of viruses, again, not a medical expert, is you can have a vaccine for them, but it doesn't go away, and it may come back in the fall, and it may be different. It may mutate. It may be less severe, more severe. We don't know, but we can't live in fear forever.
No.
We can't live in isolation. How do you psychologically torture prisoners? Isolation. That's exactly what we've done, but we've willingly isolated ourselves. We've willingly give up rights for the greater good. I get that. But at a certain point in time, people need to be able to assume risk.
No question. And I don't, again, I'm not skilled in medical, but what I'm reading is there's an element of herd immunity at some point in time. And I guess herd immunity is how we survive in the world all day, every day before all this, because we have become immune to so many different kinds of viruses through. The other thing too is I really have a lot of faith in science, and I have a lot of faith in the American ingenuity and brilliance. We have, and not just America, in the world right now, we have the greatest, most intellectually superior minds in science and medicine working on this 24/7. I really put my faith in them. They're going to come up with a way to eradicate or treat this disease. And they're going to learn things from it that when we encounter other similar issues in the future, we're going to have a leg up on it. I really believe in the power of that science and the work that those people do.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that we've been caught off guard, and we're putting the best players in the game to face this. And I think we will come out of this. I think we will learn. I think there will be a treatment. There will be a vaccine. I don't think people have these conspiracy theories. There's these hidden agendas, and
it's all nonsense.
I don't think that's the case. I think, look, it is what it is. It was a virus that hit us, and it's I can find 50 conspiracy theories to support whatever I want them to support. Like, that's just the nature of the internet, right? Anybody can create a YouTube video, throw some clips together and say Bill Gates wants to control the world.
Oh my gosh, that's one of the most ludicrous ones I've heard so far.
Yeah, and look, there are certain things that have been said and certain things that you begin to question, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It's I believe that the American people, we want to get back to normal. And I think there may be people that will never go back to normal. They may wear a mask forever, and that's their individual right.
They have a right to do it.
Individual right, individual choices. Like, that's totally fine. Like, I get that. And if you're afraid, no one's telling you to leave the house. You can order groceries. You can order your food. You don't, and that's
what a country.
Well, right, and that's what gets me so frustrated when people are bashing. Like, if you're worried about your health or your family's health, you don't have to leave.
Right.
We just want the people, and I'm good. Like, if I'm quarantined, I'll lose it mentally because that's the isolation drives me crazy. But I can work from isolation. But the people that can't, like, they just want the right to earn an income. Because
that's me.
I
can't work right now.
Right. Like, that's all you want. You don't want to go out and put people in harm's way.
No.
Like, and if people have a pre-existing immune condition or are sick, you won't deal with them, nor should you deal with them, nor should they come out and deal with you.
Right.
It comes down to taking some personal responsibility.
Amen.
If I am sick, I shouldn't go out. If I have diabetes or a heart condition or something that's a severe underlying health condition, until I feel really comfortable, I shouldn't go out. That's all we're saying. Like, we're not saying, hey, all of you people, you need to come out of your houses and get back involved in the community and go back and shop and go back to restaurants. No one is saying that. You can isolate yourself for the next 3 years if you choose to. Like, yeah, they're going to say, but people are out there spreading it. I get that. I understand. That's a good, valid point. But if you're concerned about yourself and your family, don't leave.
I'll be very interested when we get to the 1 year mark. And the 1 year mark, I'm guessing, is from the time that we were ordered to stay home.
Yeah.
I really am going to be interested in seeing the death, not the infection, but the death total at that time in the U.S., the continental U.S., and compare that to the flu. And you compare it to some other expected viruses that cause death.
Sure.
I really want to see. And again, I don't know how history is going to look back on this, and it might not be real good.
Well, and the problem is we'll never have the real number. Like you saw last week, New York's death count went up 3,700 in one day. Not because 3,700 people died that day. It was because they added 3,700 probable deaths to the death count. That they weren't tested, but they presented symptoms before they died that now they were added to the death count. So we don't know what that number is. And if they're doing that for federal, like there's talks out there, and I don't know enough to give an intelligent response to this, but I believe there has been stuff I've heard or read from certain senators that the federal government has agreed to fund the treatment of COVID-19. So if someone's in a hospital and then dies, if they mark on the death certificate COVID-19, they're marked as treated in the hospital with COVID-19, they get Medicare reimbursement.
Got it.
Now that's mine. That could be completely wrong. And if someone has information to dispute that, please let me know. But that's my understanding at this moment in time.
Wow.
So there's so many pieces to this that's why, like, creating this fear and argument doesn't work, because none of us, I don't have it, you don't have it, no one has all the information.
Right.
So I can disseminate my logical and rational opinion, not trying to say it's right or wrong or better or worse than anybody's. This is just, I'm presenting my thoughts and my side of what I see going on. You can do the same. I'm not going to bash anybody for saying different. I'm not going to get mad at someone having different opinion.
Yeah.
Because we don't have all the facts.
Right. Just to wrap this up here, are you optimistic that by the middle of May, the end of May, that we'll be pretty much not back to normal, but a functioning society, commerce will be functioning again for the most part?
I would say by the end of May, a portion of commerce will be functioning.
Okay.
I don't think that, and this is where we lack the leadership. We don't have any guidance, right? Like Wolf has said, May 8th is the day we're going to let construction get back, and but what else is coming back? And he says, we're going to give some guidance this week, but we haven't had any yet. So I hope, my hope and my optimism is by the end of May, we're slowly opening back certain things. Maybe restaurants that aren't at full capacity yet, or, that's going to take some time. I think maybe by the end of June, we'll be able to do those things. Because even if you look at the federal government's plan, it's a 6-week cycle, everything lining up correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, that's guidance. You don't have to follow that, right? That's just guidance. Like Georgia's opened up, like other states have opened up already. There's that gating process, that 14-day gating process they have. So, even if we gated the 3 times, that still puts us at 6 weeks from May 8th. So that will put us into the end of June where we can get back to some semblance of normalcy.
Did you notice too, like this, the very interesting philosophical question has been hasn't been exposed, and that is that how heavy-handed should the Fed government be as opposed to state rights? And I think you can see it in your Midwest states, and I'm not talking Illinois and Chicago where the heavy population is, but your Montanas and South Dakotas and Idaho's that did not have the infection rate and did not have the death issues that these big metropolitan areas are. Some governors shut everything down like it was New York. Yeah. And some governors looked at what I deem as being pragmatic and looked at certain counties and, let certain counties operate as normal. And thank God they did, because that kept the farmers going. That kept the food supply and the truckers. God bless the truckers. Yeah. That was the more pragmatic way to do it, to look at the state's uniqueness in regards to the virus. Yeah. I agree. But you had some, and it depended. You kind of ran along party lines. Some that the fear overtook it, and while there wasn't a huge issue in the state shut down.
Well, right, and again, when people as a whole operate from fear, we'll let anything happen to us. That's
scary.
That is, take anything from this. That's the scary thing. Not what was done, whether it was right or wrong. It's the fact that we let whatever we believe happen because we were afraid. And when you're afraid, you don't have clear head, you don't have clear thoughts, you don't have clear focus. And I'm gonna lock. Like, this is scary. Like, I'm gonna lock down. Like, I'm gonna lock. Even though in Allegheny County we've had only 1,000 cases. Now people will say, well, that's because we mitigated and we have. And I get that. Like, you can make that argument, but when they lock things down, like Lawrence County, where I grew up, there might have been 10 cases. Right. Was that a necessity at that point in time? Right. And then we can keep arguing, and they'll say, well, they'll cross county lines, and there's so many pieces to this. And my thing is, I just wish, looking back, there was rational thought set forth and a rational plan set forth as to why we are doing what we're doing and how we're going to watch it along the way and make our decisions along the way.
Well, there wasn't a plan.
Had
there would be an official government, federal, in conjunction with the states. How, and I'm sure going forward there will be, but without having that, they're making it up as they go along. Yeah. And that's the horrid thing about this. I mean, it's kind of like 9/11 and to a certain degree, but the difference is the event happened over, and yes, some anthrax issues, but the event was like a finite event, and then we had time to digest it, kind of like make peace with it, and then go react efficiently toward it. Now, in this, we really haven't had that.
No, we just reacted, and be it right or wrong. I mean, maybe we'll look back and it was the right reaction. We don't know yet. But my thing is, I just wish there was some, like, when you lock down a state, right? When you tell people stay at home till April 30th. Okay, cool. If you tell me that on April 30th, if this, and this happens, we're going to lift the restriction, or if those things don't happen, we're going to extend it. That at least gives me some level of certainty.
Amen.
But we're just kicking it down the road. Like, well, we think April 30th. Now we think May 8th, but we're not saying, or no one's telling us what is the metrics in the quantitative analysis they do to make the determination whether or not to let it up or kick it out.
This is going to be an examined part of history for a
Yeah.
long, long time. Way more examined than 9/11 or any of the world wars, Vietnam. I think the examination of what took place here, once we get through this,
Yep.
is going to be the single most examined event in the modern era.
I would agree.
You know,
It's a study in leadership. It's a study in government. It's a study in a lot of things.
study and leadership. Leadership's even a hard word to use with some of these states, I'll tell you.
It really is, man.
I appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah.
You're going to come back and do this again?
Hey, man,
Like relatively soon, right?
Yeah, anytime, man. This is what number 3.
This is number 3 for third appearance, and I'm humbled by that. Thank you.
Man,
Usually we're sharing a cocktail across the table, but maybe next time you'll be able to sit in the same room together.
I hope so, man.
All right. God bless you, man. Thank you, Rocco.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate it. Salute. We are out. Is that good?
Dude, that was awesome. It was so much fun.
I think it came off great.
Such a good conversation.